Nathan Ivie, Utah County Commissioner in seat C.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being part of Three Questions.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
You recently came out as gay.
Yes.
First question I have for you is, why now? What event in your life triggered the decision that now is the time to come out?
Great question. To start off with is the why. And the why is first and foremost because somewhere out there, there is the 22-year-old version of me. They're struggling, they're lost, they're not sure if they're valued, loved, needed. And I want them to understand that it's okay, that yes, you are. You're needed. You're needed in our homes, in our families, in our communities. The voice, the talents, the skills you bring that are uniquely yours, they're needed in our world. So keep going. Keep fighting, keep pushing through. I was fortunate when I was 22. Not everyone else is. And that ties into the second part of your question. Why now? Over the course of the last few years, specifically with my work within Circle, I've had to look in the eyes of mothers and fathers who have lost their sons and daughters to suicide because they were conflicted about who they were as people, about how God made them, about how their biology worked. And I've had to look at myself and go, that was my mom and dad, almost. So as a leader in our community, as a representative, I felt like I had a responsibility to step forward and share my story, to help people know that it's okay to be different, it's okay to struggle, it's okay to have challenges, but most importantly, just remember you're loved and you're needed here.
This was a life-changing, a life-altering development, coming out as gay.
Yeah.
Tell me the areas of your life that it has affected the most.
That's a great question. Obviously, the public attention is probably the area that it's affected the most. It's interesting to be so scrutinized. I was used to it somewhat as an elected official, but not to this level. And so I would say the area it's affected the most is the level of scrutiny. If you like something on Facebook or a particular picture on Instagram, all of a sudden people think that's some kind of big political statement, and it's really not. It's just me living my life day to day. A lot of the rest of my life hasn't changed. That's because I haven't changed. I'm exactly the same person I was a week ago, as far as the things I love, who I love, the things I'm committed to. My wife and I are still best friends. We still have two beautiful children we're rearing together. I got a daughter to get ready to take to a horse show. I got a son to support in his academic pursuits. I have a wonderful mom and dad who live right next door to me, who I get to interact with on a daily basis, and they're aging a little, so I get to help take care of them. I've got 50-plus horses that we breed and raise and train and sell, and so much of that part of life is unchanged because I'm still engaged in the same activities with the same social groups and friends that I've always been.
Talk to me about the dynamic and the emotions and the psychology of what was going on inside you that would lead you to, number one, marry a woman, and number two, carry on a life as if you were a heterosexual all of these years. Tell me, why did you do that?
Well, it's probably best to start at the beginning with that question. That's when I was 9 years old, and I realized there was something different about me because the first person I wanted to kiss was actually a boy. And as my body changed and developed, and I came into puberty, my body responded differently. My orientation was definitely different right from the beginning. So when you're 13, 14, 15, going through high school, you're dealing with a complex set of emotions anyway. And mine were completely contradictory to what I had been taught they were supposed to be, right? I was supposed to change. I was supposed to be attracted to a woman, and that's how my body was supposed to work, and that's not how it was working. So inside, I felt something was wrong. And because of societal and cultural pressures, that's not really something you can talk about. I wasn't comfortable talking about, right? Because you're so different. If someone finds out about that, then you're gay and you're shunned and you're pushed aside as this, strange, weird thing, an abnormality, a freak of nature, someone who violates nature. And so all of those complex emotions were what I grew up with. And so I came to a determination through kind of independent research and study that, maybe I could fix me. If something's broken, you fix it. I've trained horses my whole life, and so when I ran into a challenge with a horse, I always found a way to work through it and to change it and to change the behavior in the animal to hopefully help more positive outcomes. And so some of the things that you read was, you don't have enough healthy male relationships. If you just get married, all these feelings will go away. And so from the societal pressures and those teachings of that you could change this, I worked very hard to change, to try and conform to be what I was taught I was supposed to be, rather than accepting maybe it was okay to just be authentic and who nature and God had designed me to be.
And I think it's important to point out that that was the best counsel at that time.
At that time, absolutely.
At that time. How many years ago was this?
So it would have been 20 plus years ago. I graduated in 1996.
Okay.
So that would have been the high point of when I was going through a lot of these decisions. And feeling a lot of that pressure was the late 90s, early 2000s. And so society was really just barely starting to dive into a greater understanding of human sexuality. And I think it's important to understand that it's complex, right? We used to kind of
that
think
is an
of it.
Understatement.
We used to think of it as a cut and dry situation because no one ever wanted to talk about it openly. It was, something that was quiet and private and kept aside. And so it was never talked about. And so we never understood that there are actually people out there with different makeups, different biologies, and science has helped us understand that, psychology's helped us understand that. And so we're coming to a greater understanding of the complexity of the human psyche, in particular in relationship to human sexuality. And so at that time, that's kind of was the best counsel. And one thing I'd emphasize immensely is I personally don't have any bitterness to my family, to religious institutions, or anything like that, because I truly believe we're all trying to do the best we can with the information we have at the time. And that's, something it's always important to keep in mind.
So you enter into marriage, and your wife becomes pregnant, and you have another child, and things are moving forward. At what point in your family life did the light bulb go off and say, this isn't working, and no matter how long I work at this, nothing seems to be changing?
Well, that's a good question as I reflect upon some very wonderful years of my life. Honestly, to be completely honest, like my honeymoon even. Like, you just, nothing changed. So you keep working and things stay the same. Your orientation stays the same. Your attractions stay the same. And I'm married to the most amazing woman I know. She's like incredible. She's brilliant, she's kind, she's stable, supportive, everything that a person could hope for. She's beautiful. She's a phenomenal mother. And so you're going through all this process saying, I'm doing all of the things, and nothing internally changes. And so it was probably about 3 years ago, 2 years ago, when I had some other experiences to where I started to reevaluate the fact that maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe there wasn't something fundamentally flawed with me. And once I started to ask the question in that manner, if maybe there's nothing wrong with me, that I started to open myself up to a different possibility and outcome.
Your coming out as gay has affected many people, but most importantly, the ones who mean the very most to you.
Yeah.
How has this announcement affected them?
So that's the hardest part about this whole process, is the people you love the most. The fear that they'll somehow view you differently, that they'll reject you. And I've been very, very fortunate in that I have an incredible, loving family. My wife and I are probably closer as far as our kinship and our friendship than we've ever been. My parents are phenomenal they've gone through some of their struggle themselves because initially they feel like they've done something wrong. And that's the biggest thing I emphasize to them is, no. You're the most phenomenal parents in the world. You haven't done anything wrong. This is just your son. And they're accepting that. And, it's funny, the other day, I ran over to grab the mail because I mentioned I live next door to Mom and Dad, and the mail's just delivered to one street address. So I went over to grab the mail one evening, and my mom was out of town with my sisters, and my dad's in there watching the Jazz game, and we sit down and we're talking about the Jazz game and the mayors that had gotten in full and those that hadn't, and laughing and complaining about the current state of politics in America and something dumb some politician had done. And it was just life as normal. And that's what I'd emphasize mostly about my family, my support system, is they've just loved me. And they've said, hey, this is what it is. Let's carry on. And they've struggled with things, absolutely. It's hard, right? There's a mourning process. There's a grieving process when something fundamentally shifts in your life. But they've embraced that and moved on. My relationship with my kids is stronger than it's ever been. My son is actually, in his own right, kind of come out of a shell. He was a little different than us as far as, I'm a cowboy. My dad's a cowboy. His sister's horse crazy. Yeah. And he is like the, intellectual science kid.
So he's not going to follow in Dad's footsteps as a cowboy.
That was when he saw his dad was different, but nothing changed. It was like it gave him permission to be authentic himself. And as a parent, that's something that's
something you hope for your children.
Something you hope for your children. Any parent, right? You hope that they can embrace their natural talents and abilities and be who they are. And so to see that happening within my own family because I've made a decision to be honest and authentic is incredibly rewarding. The hundreds and probably thousands of messages I've received from people all over the world that are really saying the same thing, thank you for showing me it's okay to be honest and authentic, or impactful. But when you see it within the walls of your own home, that's incredible, because then you go, okay, maybe we're getting something right here. We're getting the message across that it's okay to be the unique individual that you are.
Did your wife at any time suspect that this was the case?
We've talked about that a little bit.
Whether she ever had an idea that this was happening?
Right, we've talked about it a little bit, and yes and no. You know what I mean? There's an intuition of a woman that knows things. And
you can't hide anything
and you can't hide anything from them. And
I've tried. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And so to some degree, I don't think it was a huge surprise for her. Yeah. But, that's kind of more her question to answer than mine.
So let me get this right. Your marriage has dissolved. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So as we've gone through this process, as I mentioned, I've kind of been working through it on a very personal level for a couple of years. And then obviously the first person I talked to about this was my wife, and we went through a long process together, a lot of nights talking and holding hands and how do we do this together. And the biggest thing I'd emphasize is that's what it was. It was a long conversation between the two of us of how do we do this together, and how do we do what's best for our family. And through that process, we decided, it'd be best if we were able to separate so that we both have the opportunities to have meaningful relationships and move forward with our lives. And so we worked that out together, and she actually, we found her a really nice place that's real close to the ranch, and she's, living there, and that's been the case for a little while, and the kids ride the bus home every day after school, and so we've tried to be as least disruptive with our family life as possible, but we have made that separation as far as, a living arrangement.
You are a Utah County Commissioner.
I am.
In arguably the most conservative county in the nation.
It is, yeah.
How do you expect the political fallout to come about in this case? What are your expectations politically?
Well, fortunately, I have a really good record. I'm still a lifetime member of the NRA, and you know what I mean? I still believe in this thing called limited government and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and And actually, one of the things that we passed very recently in the county was we rolled back some restrictions on business licensing and stuff in the unincorporated parts of the county that were required to do that I'd worked on. We're continuing finding ways to make sure our land use ordinances are property rights friendly, and that we continue to make sure Utah County's government is small in nature, that it's as least intrusive as we can make it. And so the way I voted and the things I do and the things I represent, my problem solving as a commissioner, those haven't changed. And I know the people will, depending on what I choose to run for in the future, I know that's what people are going to judge me on. They're going to judge me on the job I've done as their representative. And a little while back, we dealt with the Freedom Festival.
Yeah.
And I was an advocate for the non-discrimination clause, because I'm a strong believer that if you take taxpayer money, then you have to allow all taxpayers to participate, because that's a conservative principle.
Right.
Inclusion is a conservative principle where you say, look, if we're all contributing, we all get to participate. And so I stood up for that, and the community stood behind me on that overwhelmingly. And so they've seen me lead out on hard issues, and they've supported me on them. And I know my friends are my friends, and the people that look at what I've done as their elected official and the way I've tried to represent them, they'll vote based off of that. When I became commission chair, for example, we were in quite a few lawsuits, I think like 5 with Provo. By the time I got through my first few months as chair, we'd resolved all but one of those, because I bring a unique skill set to the table as a problem solver. And I was elected to govern, and that's what I've done, and that's what people will judge me on.
There are those among your constituency who now at this announcement consider you ineligible to represent them. How would you answer them? What would you say to them?
That's an interesting concept, because I don't know how somebody becomes ineligible to represent somebody. Because part of being a representative once you're elected is protecting the rights of the individual. We take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. The Constitution of the United States, at its core, is a document that's designed to protect the inalienable rights of the individual, especially when you bring it into the context of the Bill of Rights. And that's what I've continued to do. And it doesn't matter whether that individual is, on the far right of the spectrum, the far left, somewhere in the middle. My job is to make sure government does not infringe upon anybody's rights. And that's what my job is as their representative. So there's no way to become ineligible. You meet the basic requirements that people voted you to do this, and I'm continuing to fulfill that constitutional obligation of defending and protecting those individual liberties.
My wife posed a question to me when I told her that I was going to be interviewing you, and she said, "Why is that news?"
That's the best question.
And I tried to answer her, but how would you answer that question? Why is your announcement as a gay man coming out as gay, why is that news?
Because unfortunately, there is still some stigma in our society that wants to place people into labels. And as a result, we have a responsibility as leaders to peel those labels away so people can see and judge us as individuals and recognize that we're complex, diverse human beings. And that's why it's newsworthy, in my opinion, is because it's showing, look, you can be a multitude of things. You don't have to fit into a box. I own an AR-15. I own hunting rifles. I love to hunt and shoot. I like small government. I'm gay. I love horses. I love my kids. I go to the ballet. You can be all of those things, right? You don't have to be what people label you as. And I think that's why this is newsworthy, because it's a story showing, look, you don't have to fit into the boxes and labels people try and print on you. You can be your unique self.
How do you reconcile being a member of the party that opposes same-sex marriage?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's very, very easy for me. I agree with probably 80-90+% of the Republican platform on the issue of marriage, and I've been consistent on this. My personal opinion and position has always been that government shouldn't be involved in the marriage industry. Marriage is a cultural and a religious institution, and it's not government's job to put barriers on who and who cannot participate in that. If we want to talk about who can file their taxes jointly, we should have a really good policy discussion, because I think there's a much better way than defining that as between one man and one woman. But on the marriage issue itself, I recognize the party platform's different, and I vary from that. I just don't think it's government's role. But interestingly enough, it ties back into our earlier conversation. We shouldn't label people, right? Just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean that you think it's okay to kill a child when it's 9 months old. Right?
Yeah.
And so we can have variances or disagreements with particular components of our party's platform, but still agree with the broader perspective, view, and direction that the party wants to move the nation. From my perspective, the Republican Party's responsibility and job is to protect individual liberty, to keep government small and non-intrusive, to balance the budget, which we haven't done a very good job of, and to act with fiscal responsibility. Those are the broader issues for me, and where I see government's most important roles. And so that's why I'm happy to be a Republican, is because I agree with those tax policies, with those fiscal responsibility policies, and with that, property rights policy, and that limited scope of government in individuals' lives. And there's inevitably going to be things we disagree on. So why do I stay a Republican? Well, the best way to affiliate change is from within. We change ourselves from within, right? As we grow and progress as individuals, we're a different person than we were 10 years ago. We've grown up some since then.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Some of us.
Some of us.
Some people do.
And so as a result, the Republican Party can grow up on some issues, and I think you can effectuate change from within better than you can from without.
As I have spoken with my gay friends about their coming out, they talked of the inner conflict that goes on, that you experience prior to coming out as gay.
Yeah.
My question to you is this: how has that conflict within you affected the way you approach honesty and integrity and character?
I've always, my whole life, tried to be someone who acted with integrity and honesty. And I've always kept a certain component of myself hidden from the world, because I felt like it was my battle to fight. And once I kind of got through that battle, I went, you know what? Maybe it's better to show some of the scars, to help somebody who's going through the battle know that there's victory that's at the other end. For me, this process of coming out has kind of been like balm to 30 plus years of a civil war I fought with inside of myself.
Balm as in B-A-L-M?
Yeah, soothing, right? Something that eases the scars. They're there. There's hurt, there's sorrow. But this process for me has been the end of a civil war that I fought with inside of myself privately. And as far as my integrity goes, I hope that people will see when I'm wrestling with an issue that I'll work it out, and when I feel the time is right, I'll share it. And that's how this has been for me. It's an issue I had to work out before I put it on public display. And I've got it worked out, and I'm comfortable now. I've put up that surrender to that civil war, and so now I'm happy to share that part of me.
You are coming from a paradigm that includes marriage, family, children, church attendance, all of those things that are culturally the norm here in Utah.
Yeah.
So you're coming from that paradigm, and you've got that down very well.
Yeah.
But now you are shifting to a new paradigm where the pattern isn't the same.
Okay.
How are you navigating those waters?
Well, you navigate any waters, one day at a time, one step at a time, right? You have a long-term plan, and once your basic strategic, plan's in place, the tactical problems become solvable. I truly believe in that. And my basic strategic plan is made. I know where I want to end up in my life, and that's being the best individual I can be. And now the tactical problems are solvable. And much of my day-to-day life doesn't change. I still buy hay from my neighbors. We still chat over the ditch bank. We, still complain that it's raining too much right now because there's too much mud and we can't plant our corn, and we complain that there's not enough rain and our corn's not growing. And so much of my day-to-day life is unchanged by that. I still have the same associations, the same friendships, Bishop still comes over to my house and visits. So a lot of those things, are unchanged. And I've opened myself up to new friends and new possibilities. And it's always great to expand your horizons, to see things from different perspectives and different people's experiences. And so I'm happy to embrace and include and bring some of those experiences into my life that I haven't been able to have part of my life. And so I'm excited for that part, just like anytime we set off on a journey, right? We're always excited about the new possibilities, but that doesn't mean we abandon the cherished things with us. We bring those cherished things with us as we experience new things.
You were born and raised in the Utah culture and in the predominant religion.
Yeah.
How do you view your connection with that culture and with the religion going forward?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, I'm very much a Western kid. I wore my cowboy boots.
There is cowboy boots,
I still have
right
on my Wrangler jeans. I still put my pants on one leg at a time, and I have to go out and feed my horses every morning. So I am very much in love with the Western culture. I love to ski. It's my escape from reality is being up in the mountains skiing. We're planning a pack trip with my son for this summer, just like we always do. I don't have a deer hunting tag or an elk tag because I have really crappy luck when it comes to drawing out. and so I'll probably buy a tag and go bow hunting with one of my friends up in Idaho this fall. So I'm still engaged in that. When I wake up and I see the morning sunrise, and when I feel its warmth, it's the same love from a Father in heaven and a God who's loved me my whole life, who I desperately love and cherish my relationship with. And that in my life has never been,
It's okay, take your time.
Based on an institution or a building. On a very personal note, the very first time I was going through a lot of struggles, right? And I was mid-teens, and we were on a hunting trip with my dad in the wilderness area of the Book Cliffs, and it was just the two of us. And it was late in the evening, and we're riding down She Canyon. And that sunset is falling on me. And that was the first time I had that overwhelming spiritual confirmation that God loved me. And I've sustained that memory my whole life. And it was established independent of anything anybody had preached from a pulpit or said or done. Obviously, those things influenced and shaped my belief system. Sure. But that fundamental principle of love and acceptance from Him is unchanged. It's stronger today than it's ever been. And so when people ask me about working through that paradigm and that shift in cultural dynamics, it's like, well, it's not really changed because I still have that same belief. Mm-hmm. I still have that same commitment that I've always had to Him to try and be my best self. I believe that that's what He's asked me to be, is the best that I can be, and to let Him make up for the places I fall short. And that's unchanged in me. I'm still striving every day to be the best I can be and trusting Him to carry me through the hard times.
There is what has been termed as a collision course that is in place between the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the LGBTQ community. Right. And for all of the talking and consulting and coming together of those two entities, for all of the nice talk and the accommodations and all of the good things that are coming about from those discussions, the fact remains is that between the church and the LGBTQ community, there is a collision course at which they will not come together, ever, it looks like. How do you reconcile that? How do you view that collision course?
So the biggest thing, the way I would answer that particular question is I can't control anybody else. It's not my job to. My dad is probably one of the smartest, most wise people I know, and he always reminded me my whole life growing up that life's about 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react. And so my choice is to react with kindness, love, and to just try and be understanding, to have my own viewpoints, but to respect that there are just simply times that we're going to disagree. And I hope that as a nation, particularly, and fragmented community divisions, we can rediscover this concept of civility, that we can find out that it's okay to disagree. We don't have to be disagreeable. We can go have a Diet Coke and beer after. It's okay, right? We don't. Part of the beauty of America, part of the beauty of the world is the diversity. We actually don't all have to agree and see things the same, and that's what makes it really cool. It's really cool to see, people who have different faiths, who have different belief systems, who have different cultures and ideas, and to have our lives be enriched by those rather than destroyed by them. And so the church brings amazing, beautiful things to the world. The LGBTQ community brings amazing, beautiful things to the world. So let's just celebrate the good stuff we bring. Let's try and find common ground in the areas we can, and let's try and let go of some of the hate. Stop allowing hate to dictate our own happiness. Whether it's hate to one particular group or community or church, stop letting that destroy who you are as a person, for crying out loud. To me, that's silly. And I'd probably quote Brigham Young on this one. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's, "He who takes offense when no offense was intended is a fool. And he who takes offense when offense was intended is possibly a greater fool." There's no reason to be all up in arms and offended about everything in life. Just be happy and fight for what you believe in, and be for something rather than continually against something.
10 to 15 years from now, this announcement that you have made will be ancient history.
It will be.
Where do you see yourself personally, professionally, and politically?
Okay.
10 to 15 years out from now.
Well, when you first asked me the question about 10 to 15 years out from now, I go, well, it's June. And so I'll hopefully be on the back of a really good Derby horse getting ready to go show at the NRHA Derby in Oklahoma City. Because I happen to have this absolute love for horses. That they are my life. If I can be remembered as anything, I hope to be remembered as a good person and a great horseman. And so I see myself preparing to go show a horse at the Derby. Personally, I hope to be more kind, more compassionate, more understanding. I hope to be someone who's brought a voice of civility and dialogue to contentious issues. Politically, who knows? Politicians are crazy. I don't know why we sign.
You know that firsthand, do you?
Yes. Who signs up for this kind of, abuse, especially in today's world of
well, you did.
Warriors.
You did.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking at that time. So, as far as that goes, I see myself serving my community. I was taught and raised that we give back. When we've been given a gift and we've been given opportunities, that we give back. And so I will be in whatever capacity I feel is going to enable me to use my talents and gifts to enrich the lives of my neighbors and communities. Whether that's serving in political office at some place, or it's sitting on my backyard, looking out over a nice field of babies, and encouraging my kids in whatever endeavor they're engaged in. And so that's where I see myself is just continuing to try and serve and enrich the community through the talents I have. I hope that I can continue to do my photography work and share those images in a manner that move people and inspire people to be better human beings. And so I hope in the end of all of this, I can be a good horseman, I can be a great dad, and I can look forward to grandkids. But most of all, I can be someone who's contributed to society in such a way that we've come closer together. The idea behind America was that we could take all of these differences and somehow come together and form a more perfect union. And I hope that in all of my service, in the things I say and do, even though I screw up from time to time, I can somehow positively contribute to us being a greater union.
Well, Nathan Ivie, Utah County Commissioner and Seat C,
Seat
and
C.
member of the Republican Party.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being part of 3 Questions.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the chance.